Hey, what's up, everyone? Been playing Diablo 4, much like everyone else, the past couple days. And I just wanted to share with you guys what, in my experience so far, has been the smoothest Sorceress leveling. I don't know how this compares to the meta builds out there. This is just what I came up with myself. But I have now leveled a Sorceress 3 different times now, one in each beta, as well as now. And I've also experimented quite a bit with all of the different skills, and I have found that this really just felt the best to me out of all the different variations that I played. What this build is a Crackling energy-based Sorceress. Now, Sorcerer, I guess I have to get used to saying Sorcerer, is gender non-specific in this game. But the main thing that we're building around here is using Unstable Currents, which is our ultimate ability that allows us to proc a lot of Crackling energy, and Crackling energy are these kind of bluish orbs that drop on the ground periodically. These get spawned off of certain shock skills that have a lucky hit or critical strike coefficient that can make that spawn. What Crackling Energy does is, if you look above my action bar right now, you'll see a couple little orbs right there. Every time you pick up one of the balls, you'll get 3 of those orbs, and then that will do effectively a chain lightning attack against enemies that are nearby. What I really enjoyed about this build is it allows you to press a kill everything on the screen button, and it becomes very kinetic, and it just feels really, really great, shocking the entire screen. It really captures that feeling of just turning into like an avatar of lightning and destroying the entire screen. It's a relatively safe build. It's also based on getting as much cooldown reduction and critical strike chance and damage as you can. And by getting so much cooldown recovery rate, it allows us to use Flame Shield a lot, which is pretty much the best, like, oh crap button. I just gotta, make sure I don't die. Possibly in the game. It's pretty ridiculous. What you see in the background right now is me doing my first Nightmare dungeon ever. I am level 51. The monsters in here are level 54. This is pretty shortly after getting to World Tier 3. And I'm still very undergeared. I have a lot of pretty low level gear on right now. And I think the ceiling for this build as it scales is going to be pretty incredible. In this Nightmare Dungeon, did it totally deathless. It felt pretty easy. I've also done some of the Hell Flood mechanic, some of the world events, the Legion Gathers world events, and this build has felt really, really good for that. So yeah, what is the build? Let's get into it. All right, so the core of the build is this thing right here. This is called Crackling Energy. And if you look right above my action bar, you can see that I have up to 12 Crackling Energy balls. And if I walk next to a monster, I don't know if it does it against a deer. If I walk next to monsters, you see it'll automatically be doing kind of like these shocks in an AoE around me. And then it'll tick down and go away. And then I pick up another one, and then it'll proc 3 times, and then stop. And the entire build is based around generating as many Crackling Energies as possible, picking them up, and then getting our cooldown reduction from that, getting more damage from that, and turning it kind of into an engine there. And then to show you guys like what the real power and the real fun is, this is our ultimate ability right here, which is Unstable Currents. When I pop Unstable Currents right here, every shock skill that I use will proc another shock skill, even if I don't have any points put into it. When I press it, my character will go all glowy like black and blue and it looks super badass, like this. And then every time I cast a spell, it'll cast other additional spells. So even if I right-click right here, you can see it's throwing other skills. My right-click is my spark, and you can see it's just throwing a bunch of other skills all over the screen. And the screen floods with as many different spells that you're casting. And what we're trying to do is we want those spells to also help us create more Crackling Energy, reduces our cooldown, and then we can do Unstable Currents again. And really the entire key that is bringing this all together is Overflowing Energy. Each time it hits an enemy, your shock skill cooldowns are reduced by 0.1 seconds, increased to 0.25 against elites. So that means every time it procs, as long as there's 2 enemies nearby, all of your cooldowns will go down by 0.2 seconds. And then to generate Crackling Energy, we went out of our way to get every single passive point that we can on our tree here that says Crackling Energy. So starting off, we are using Spark for our basic skill. What it does is it hits the primary target, and then it has a chance of hitting additional targets. Since it's a shock skill, there's additional synergies with anything that says shock. And the big thing here is it has a 3% chance to form Crackling Energy every time it hits an enemy. And every time that you attack with it, it actually hits 4 times with a chance to hit 3 more times on top of that. So there's roughly about a 10% chance, assuming there's multiple monsters, of generating a Crackling Energy every time that we use our Spark. And that's really what kind of like kicks the engine off. So we can just start with just our simple Spark. As you can see, it attacks a bunch of times. Just one right click right here is hitting a bunch of times, and you'll see it's leaving a lot of Crackling Energies behind. That is also because we have additional points that generate crackling energy based on critical strikes from our shock skills. All right, well, let's go ham here real quick again. Kill all of the monsters really, really quickly, and you can just, give you guys a little bit more of a teaser of what this turns into, when we press our buttons. So Spark is really kind of what we're kicking it off with, and it's generating the crackling energy. And then Chain Lightning is really our main skill. You can see I have very much prioritized getting passive points put into it. So Chain Lightning bounces around, hits a bunch of different monsters. It gets increased critical strike chance per bounce. So it bounces 4 times for the last monster hit, having a 12% base additional chance to critical strike. And then because we're going into critical strike with our Chain Lightning, then it has a 25% chance to form crackling energy just from that as well. So really between Spark and Chain Lightning right here, it's already generating a ton of crackling energy all over the ground. You'll see that I have Charged Bolts right here. I am going into Destructive Charged Bolts. We don't manually cast it. You'll know that it's not on my bar here whatsoever because Unstable Currents is proccing all of our lightning skills. Even skills that aren't on our bar are proccing and being cast. So we can kind of get around the limitation of only having a couple spells on our bar. Coming from Path of Exile, I find it very limiting to only have 6 different spells that I can use. Path of Exile with your utility and everything, by these days you have like 10 to 12 by default. Only having 6 total right now feels really limiting. And so I really like the idea that we can kind of get around this and utilize a lot of additional skills here. So the nice thing here is the Destructive Charged Bolts. It's a very nice defensive layer when we press our big buttons and we start going ham. Flame Shield is just best in slot. I would be surprised if there is a single Sorceress build right now that doesn't use it. There might be one that goes really hard into Ice Armor, but Flame Shield is so crazy because it makes you 100% invulnerable and immune to everything, which means it makes you fully unstoppable to everything. It's just ridiculously strong. It also does a good amount of damage. It applies the burning effect, so anything that says, increased damage to burning enemies, if you're standing right next to them with Flame Shield, you can take advantage of that. Now, it does have a very short duration, and it heals you for 50% of your missing life. So, if you're at 50% life, you'll go up to 75% life. It's a great just free healing potion as well. And since we have so much cooldown recovery rate, especially with our Unstable Currents proccing, we actually can use our Flame Shield pretty often. On top of that, probably where I'm going to put my final points, I'm still missing a couple passive points, probably going to put them into Elemental Attunement right here. Because we are going so hard into Critical Strike, this will periodically also reset some of our defensive skills. So that gives us a chance of resetting our Flame Shield, which is pretty wild. In terms of Teleport, I don't know how or why you would ever play Sorc without Teleport. It is the reason why I'm playing Sorc. It is one of the best feeling mobility skills I find in any RPG, actually. It just feels incredible. It goes really quickly wherever you want to go. It grants you unstoppable. It does decent damage. Since we have so much cooldown recovery rate, you can actually use it pretty often. And the big thing here is actually while leveling, I recommend Mystical Teleporting. It makes your crackling energy hit 2 additional enemies. Honestly, the choice here is really, are you feeling like you're tanky enough? Do you need more defense or not? Currently, since my character is so undergeared, I'm using Shimmering Teleport. And if you're doing any crackling energy, I really think Mystical Teleport is just better. Hitting 2 additional enemies, with our other additional right there, that means our crackling energy is going to hit 4 enemies every single time, proccing that additional cooldown recovery rate for 0.4 cooldown recovery every single time it procs if you're in a big pack of monsters. Honestly, I can't wait to get back to Mystical Teleport. However, since I'm so undergeared right now, I need that 30% damage reduction at the moment. Glass Cannon, I put these points in a little bit later after I had the rest of my tree filled out, but it's 18% increased damage. You deal 18% increased damage, you take 9% more. I think most Sorc builds are probably going to take this because any source of damage is just generally pretty good. If you are feeling squishy, feel free to just put these points somewhere else. And then Lightning Spear. So the nice thing about Lightning Spear right here is it has some pretty good synergies with Crackling Energy. All right, and I should be showing the skills as I'm going through them. So Teleport just goes wherever your mouse wants you to go. It's really, really fast. It's really awesome. You should use it. It gives you so much additional mobility, allows you to dodge boss attacks, anything telegraphed. It's pretty incredible. I actually think I think it's pretty mandatory to play Sorc. And then Flame Shield like this, just like I said, it makes you immune to everything. You can be standing in the scariest thing. You can even use it when you're stunned or anything, which is pretty wild. Most other games, when you're stunned, you can't react anymore. But yeah, if you're stunned or frozen or whatever, you can press your Flame Shield button and just walk right out. It makes you run faster. It heals you. It's an absolutely incredible, probably overpowered button. And then next up is Lightning Spear. So Lightning Spear right here, what this does is it summons this little guy. It will fly around you and target enemies. The enhanced Advanced Lightning Spear, the great thing there is it has a stacking critical strike chance. So as it just continually hits more enemies, and then eventually it's just always going to be critting no matter what. And then we're using Invoked Lightning Spear right here. Now, while Summon Lightning Spear is really nice for just that 100% increased damage, I think stunning enemies for 2 seconds is just way too good. Not to mention that we get additional bonuses when we stun enemies. We have damage to stun enemies. Then I have 1 point into Align the Elements for damage reduction against elites. This is kind of neat when you have it fully leveled up. I used to have it fully leveled up, but I found it's not really necessary right now, and I'm just putting my points into other things. When you have it fully leveled up, you get 3% damage reduction every second you haven't been hit by an elite. So it's pretty nice if you're just kind of like dodging things and walking around. The problem is there's a lot of like goop on the ground and random stuff happening all the time that relying on kind of that ticking up in the middle of a fight, I think might be a little bit of a placebo, thinking it's too effective in the middle of a fight, unless you're like dodging a lot and running around a lot. There's 40 seconds between elite fights. You know, you can have a gigantic damage reduction from that first hit at least. And I think that's pretty cool. The other thing that we want here is protection. This is really nice to just always be generating a barrier. There are a lot of legendary passives that make you do more damage or take reduced damage when you have a barrier. So it's good to just always be generating that and having it available. And then another skill that we're not using manually right here, Ball Lightning. Like I said, because Unstable Currents is constantly proccing so many different skills, we can rely on this being up pretty reliably, you know, when we press our Unstable Currents and we're in a big fight. So Ball Lightning, it will travel kind of slowly in front of you. It attacks 3.3 times a second, and that actually gets increased by 200% of your attack speed bonus, so it can start hitting really, really quickly. Now, I kind of go back and forth between Wizard's Ball Lightning and Mage's Ball Lightning. Sometimes I feel like I almost generate too much crackling energy. If you pay attention to some of the times that I just went absolutely ham, like if you watch the early footage, when I was in that nightmare dungeon, I would end the fight and there would be a screen full of crackling energy, like more than I could ever use. Now you do keep it and it stays with you as you walk through the rest of the dungeon, and you can go back and recharge if you need to, but you know, you don't really want to be backtracking and picking it up again. So that leftover crackling energy, it's really a balance. Like you want to be able to over sustain it in the middle of a thick fight, but it doesn't really matter that much if you have more than enough, right? So you don't want to over generate it. So I kind of go back and forth. Like you kind of want to play this by ear based on your critical strike and lucky hit chance, how much you're generating. You'll pay close attention to that. I'm experimenting with Mage's Ball Lightning right now because after Ball Lightning hits close enemies 50 times, which is very, very often, right? We end up casting 5 to 10 Ball Lightnings during our Unstable Currents. And then some of those will be stunning enemies for 1 second, which is obviously incredibly powerful since we have a lot of synergy with stun. I really want to use Mage's Ball Lightning, but I have to get my lucky hit and critical strike chance up to proc more crackling energy. So that's kind of like the balance that I'm kind of working with right now. Kind of the key here is Static Discharge, which on lucky hit, so there's 2 different procs when you attack. There's the chance to lucky hit and there's the chance to critical strike. And if both of them succeed, it's a double pass fail. If you win both of those coin flips, then there's a third coin flip for a 15% chance to form crackling energy. So if you have a 100% chance to lucky hit and a 100% chance to crit, then, you know, every single hit will be a lucky crit, and then you'll have a 15% chance after that to generate crackling energy. The math there is if you have a 50% lucky hit and 50% crit, 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.15. For a 3.75% chance to generate crackling energy every single time you attack. Now, that's obviously very low, even with very high lucky and critical strike chance. Remember that Spark alone can just hit 5 times by itself. Chain Lightning can hit 5 times. We have our Arc Spear going all over the place. Even though these numbers are kind of low, we're going to be hitting so many times that the procs happen pretty often. And because of this, we really want to get our lucky hit and critical strike chance up as much as possible. So I've been prioritizing that a lot on my gear. Like if I have any lucky or critical strike chance on, you know, jewelry or anything, if I see that, I prioritize it and I go for it. And then here's the really nice thing, and this is kind of like the main reason why I put this build together, is I find it really annoying managing mana in this game and managing your resource. I'm coming from Path of Exile. I'm a PoE player. In PoE, you eventually solve your mana. You get your mana cost to the point where it no longer becomes a factor. You get your spells to cost like 1 mana, and you get like 5 mana regen per sec. As long as you're not attacking more than 5 times a second, you have infinite mana, right? You never even think about it anymore. And that's just PoE design philosophy. Coming from that, I don't want to look at my mana. I don't want to care about it. And so when I saw Invigorating Conduit here, when you absorb crackling energy, you gain 12 mana. While we're generating so much crackling energy, when I press that button, mana no longer becomes a factor. As long as I'm walking over those crackling energies and generating more, I can sit there and spam my main core skill. We're always topped up and we're always doing max damage. And that's pretty cool. We don't have to sit there and spam our little spark skill. Like I said earlier, we have a lot of stun synergy Big thing here is every time you stun an enemy, you get 1,000 damage at my current level, 45% lightning damage. This is absolutely incredible if we have a lot of chance to stun. So getting into that additional synergy right there, we want to get into convulsions right here. So on lucky hit, we have a 9% chance to stun enemies for 3 seconds with any shock skill. This counts our teleport, this counts our spark, etc. I think the synergy is kind of beautiful. We are using coursing currents right here, which will give you a stacking critical strike chance with any shock skill. So what this is if I can hit an enemy without shocking, yeah, you can see right here, critical strike chance has increased. And in fact, I hit 5 times with my spark without critting, and this stacked 5 times. So if we look at the skill, and I don't die as this happening, this is actually giving me 15% chance to crit on my next attack. 15% additional chance to crit on my next attack. And so obviously that's going to be really, really huge. So let's see if we can get that up again. 5, that went to 7, and then it did crit afterwards. So then it reset. So you can see that the crackling energy is actually critting, and you can see it building up and then resetting every single time that a crit procs. And you can see, like, I don't even have to do that much. I pick up the crackling energy, it kind of procs itself, does a lot of damage by itself. So that's the way that coursing currents works. It guarantees that you're going to be critting, kind of like a, a Genshin Impact pity system for your critical strikes. Electrocution right here, enemies deal less damage after being critically struck for 5 seconds. This would obviously be nice. There's a lot of points that I would love to have 3 out of 3 on, but I've had to, cut some corners here and there to try to get all the points that I want. Since we're critting so often, you can just assume that this is going to be, pretty active all the time. This goes up to 15% at 3 out of 3. And the way that I would think about this is if you're feeling a little too squishy, take points out of glass cannon and then put them into electrocution here. And you can move that between, based on if you want to do more damage or take less damage. And that's going to have like a very big difference. And then with unstable currents, right, that's our big button that we do this. And then we sit here and cast, and you can see all of the different spells that come out, right, as I start spamming my stuff. It just, we flood the screen with as much lightning as we can. This is our spectacular ultimate ability. The other thing is it gives you 25% increased attack speed, and then additional synergy right here. While it's active, crackling energy constantly pulses, and it doesn't consume charges. So these charges right here, after your ult finishes, will always be maxed out. So this allows you to kind of just keep pushing your advantage. Even after your ult is out, you still have that screen full of crackling energy you can pick up and keep killing the monsters and keep resetting your cooldown and making unstable currents be available more quickly than ever. And then, like I said at the very beginning, kind of like the linchpin that allows us to keep flowing and always be doing this is overflowing energy here. That's all of the passive points in the build. In terms of the Paragon tree, like I said, I'm still pretty low level. I'm 51 right now. I just got to World 3, so I saw damage, so I went for damage. I went for Elementalist right here. I don't know anything else about deep Paragon trees or anything at the moment, so that'll come later. We'll do a more complete build guide there. This is just like what I leveled with and what it felt like. And in terms of the legendary stuff that I'm using right now, I'll show you guys really quickly. Lucky hit chance is increased by up to 20% while a barrier is active. More lucky hit chance, more crit chance, more cooldown reduction. That's all we care about, right? Basic skills, damage reduction is nice. This one's incredible. I think this one you definitely want to go for. While unstable currents is active, it has an additional up to 20% chance for an additional shock skill. So it's actually 1.2 shock skills per cast, which is pretty great. And then there's this legendary right here. While unstable currents is not active, your shock skills have a 20% chance to trigger. So you actually get a 0.2 unstable currents all the time. So you're just always triggering additional lightning skills all the time. Damaging elite enemy grants you a barrier. This is just, a nice little defensive thing. This one's nice. Collecting crackling energy gives you up to 15% additional movement speed. This one's great. Lightning spear has a 30% chance to spawn an additional lightning spear. So you get 1.3 lightning spears every single time one is cast. Critical strikes with core skills increase your attack speed by up to 25%. More attack speed, more procs, more crits, more lucky strikes, right? That's all we care about. We just want to proc as much as possible. And then Mother's Embrace, came from Mommy. If a core skill hits 5 or more enemies, up to 40% of the resource cost is refunded. Since we are using Chain Lightning, it's hitting 5 enemies every single time in a big pack of monsters. That is proccing very often. This also helps us sustain our mana, very reliably. This isn't like a formal end game guide or anything. I died only once throughout the entire campaign. I did most of the campaign on World Tier 2, stupidly. Like, you actually don't have to. It gives you almost nothing. This build made absolute mincemeat of the entire campaign. And even in World Tier 3, I'm feeling pretty good with pretty low level and pretty bad gear. And I'm excited to see where it goes. The cool thing about this game is you can always just respec into anything that you want. Like, it's really, really cheap. Like, I change things constantly and I'm always experimenting. That's always what I recommend. I just want to show you guys like my thought process, the way that I put things together and the synergies. And I just want to inspire you to, work on your own stuff and learn stuff yourself as well. I think that's really where the fun comes from playing these games. So yeah, hopefully this was some cool information for you, and hopefully this inspires you to play your own build that you think is pretty cool. After I get to like the real endgame, I think I'll do like a final first impressions of Diablo. I've experienced, I think, most of the game right now. I want to feel out a little bit more of like the real endgame before I give my, final initial thoughts. The short of it, honestly, is it's fun. It's pretty expensive to play this weekend, to be perfectly honest. Like $90 to play the first weekend is insane. Like that's just a game with a battle pass and an MTX store with $90. Like, come on. But besides that, it is a well-made game. It is fun, but I am enjoying it. I am generally having more fun than I thought I would after playing the beta, like for real. So yeah, that's it for me. Hope you're having fun with whatever game you're playing. I'll see y'all soon. Goodbye.